Hello friends, welcome to BookTube. Today we're going to talk about Thinking in Systems by Donella Meadows. It was 2 a.m. Sumit sat in his room, staring at his laptop screen. The cup of coffee beside him had gone cold, but his mind was racing. The same thing had happened at the office today: lack of coordination within the team. Everyone was caught up in their own tasks, and in the end the project got delayed. He couldn't figure out where the problem was. After scrolling mindlessly for a while, he picked up the book in front of him, Thinking in Systems by Donella Meadows. He had bought this book recently but never got the chance to read it. Frustrated, he opened the book and started reading the first chapter. Systems transcend their individual components. Reading this line, he paused for a moment. Systems aren't just collections of individual parts. They are defined by their interconnections and purpose. That meant if something relied solely on its individual elements, it could never function as a true system. He thought about his office project. Everyone was doing their job, but no one was in sync with each other. It was like a football team where every player was giving their best, but without strategy, communication, and shared goals, could they ever win? Sumit suddenly remembered his college football team. He wasn't an exceptional player, but his team always performed solidly because of coordination, planning, and a common goal. He recalled a crucial match where their main striker got injured. Everyone thought they would lose. But their coach gave them a simple strategy. Focus on the opponent's weak spots and maintain constant communication. The entire team created such synergy that their performance surpassed their individual skills. Emergent behavior, he read in the book. This refers to behavior that doesn't arise from individual elements but from their interactions. He thought, if a football team can't win based only on individual talent, can my office project succeed with just individual effort? No. He had to look at his system, its interconnections, feedback loops, and relationships. Sumit got up and moved toward the whiteboard. He wrote down all the elements of his project: development, testing, design, management. Then he mapped out their connections, who depended on whom, where the information was coming from, and where communication was breaking down. After analyzing for a while, he noticed a major gap. There was weak coordination between the testing team and the development team. Testing got late updates and development found out about issues too late. Feedback loops are crucial, he told himself. In systems, feedback loops are vital. Positive feedback loops drive growth, while negative feedback loops maintain stability. He thought, if I create a strong feedback loop, team efficiency might improve. The next day at the office, Sumit decided to experiment. He arranged a quick sync-up meeting between the testing and development teams, where everyone would give daily updates and receive immediate feedback. At first, some people were skeptical, but gradually the system started working. A week later, there was noticeable progress. Testing received timely updates, development caught issues early, coordination improved, and most importantly, the team now had a common goal. That evening, Sumit went home, picked up the book again, and read. The success of a system is not about individual excellence but about how well the parts connect and work together. He took a deep breath. Maybe this applied to every aspect of life, whether in the office, relationships, or any other system. More than individual effort, what mattered was the right connections and the right purpose. A week later, Sumit sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen. He had introduced a new feedback system that had significantly improved coordination between testing and development teams. But today something felt off. Progress had suddenly slowed down. What's going on? He asked himself. When the system was first implemented, everything felt smooth. But now, the team's energy and responsiveness had dropped. That night, he opened Thinking in Systems again. The chapter was about feedback loops shaping system behavior. Systems depend on two types of feedback loops: balancing, stabilizing loops, reinforcing, amplifying loops. Just like a thermostat maintains temperature, balancing loop, and compound interest increases wealth exponentially, reinforcing loop, systems evolve based on these mechanisms. Predict long-term outcomes, he smiled. Perhaps systems are not just processes, but a form of conversation where timely and relevant feedback can change everything. Sumit was now grappling with a new question in his office. After improving feedback loops in his team over the past few weeks, efficiency had increased, but there was still a strange pattern emerging. Some things were improving rapidly, but fundamental issues remained. He wondered, am I just making surface-level changes? That night, he opened Thinking in Systems again. The chapter was on leverage points dictate systemic change. Not all interventions are equal. Some changes have a deep impact, while others are just superficial fixes. He began to question whether his changes were only quick fixes or if they had fundamentally shifted the system. According to Meadows, leverage points are spots in a system where small changes can create large impacts, but each leverage point's effectiveness is different. He looked at Meadows' list of leverage points. The most powerful leverage points were paradigm shifts, system goals, and information flows. Paradigm shifts meant changing the way we think entirely, like raising awareness about sustainability in society or making work from home mainstream. Changing system goals meant redefining the purpose of the system. Improving information flows meant increasing transparency and bringing data-driven decision-making. Sumit thought about his team. He had only improved information flow by creating feedback loops, which had increased efficiency. But if he wanted deep change, he would need to look at the system's goals. Suddenly, he remembered that his team's primary goal was to deliver projects on time. Maybe this was the problem. If the focus was solely on deadlines, quality and innovation would be compromised. But if the goal were redefined to deliver high-quality and innovative solutions efficiently, the whole system would behave differently. The next day, Sumit had a discussion with his team. "What's our real goal?" he asked. At first, everyone gave the same old answer: timely delivery. But what's the point of timely delivery if the quality is poor? After some discussion, the entire team agreed that quality and innovation were just as important. Next, Sumit applied another leverage point: adjusting incentives. Previously, incentives were only focused on deadlines. But now, recognition was given for best innovations, best problem solving, and best collaboration. Slowly, the behavior of the entire team started changing. Now, people weren't just finishing tasks quickly but were trying to bring better solutions. A month later, the system showed real shifts. Not only were projects delivered on time, but their quality had also significantly improved. People were more engaged and creative than before. That evening, Sumit opened the book again. Adjusting system goals and incentives creates lasting change, where superficial fixes fail. He smiled. He now understood that making the right changes in the right places made all the difference. Sumit was happy seeing his team's new energy. In the past few weeks, by using leverage points, he had made fundamental changes in the system. Feedback loops had improved, the team had been redefined, and incentives had been adjusted. Projects were now being delivered on time, and their quality was significantly better. But a new problem was emerging. Team members were burning out. Deadlines were being met, but people's energy was running low. Creativity, which had been at its peak, was slowly diminishing. Am I missing something? Sumit asked himself. That night, he opened Thinking in Systems again. Today's chapter was on the limits of growth. Infinite growth collides with finite resources. Sumit continued reading. If unlimited growth is pushed in a system, but it has finite resources, eventually the system breaks down. Meadows had explained this using the tragedy of the commons example. If everyone overuses shared resources for their benefit, the resources eventually run out. Sumit thought about his team's current situation. Everyone was performing at their best, but if this continued, people would get exhausted and productivity would drop. He needed to balance the system's inflows and outflows. Suddenly, a story from his college days came to mind. There was a new co-working space in his city where everyone could work for free. Initially, the energy was great, people were collaborating, and new ideas were emerging. But over time, some people started working there for hours every day and resources were being overused. The system became strained, and in the end, management had to impose strict rules and restrict some people. Sumit thought, this might apply here. The next day he had a discussion with his team. Can we sustain this level of performance? He asked. At first, people were silent. Then a developer spoke up. Honestly, we're all enjoying it, but now we're feeling some extra pressure. We need to find balance. Sumit replied, we're delivering high performance, but if we don't manage our energy, we'll burn out. He then explained Meadows' concept. Systems must balance inflows and outflows to avoid collapse. The changes included a monthly innovation break, where people could explore new ideas without the pressure of deadlines. Workloads were redistributed so everyone had an equal load to prevent anyone from being overburdened. There were performance cycles, high-intensity work followed by low-intensity recovery periods. Slowly, the effects of these changes began to show. Now, people weren't just focusing on short-term gains but were also thinking about sustainability. Work-life balance improved and long-term productivity increased. That evening, Sumit opened the book again. Sustainability over short-term gains is the key to lasting quests, he smiled. He now understood that managing growth was just as important as achieving it. Sumit felt that everything was going well. Feedback loops had been optimized, leverage points strategically adjusted, and the team was working sustainably. Work-life balance was maintained and overall performance was steady. But then, a few weeks later, productivity started to decline. In meetings, people were showing less energy and deadlines were being missed again. Sumit was muttering, "This trap works like this. Whenever the team is overwhelmed, the management quickly steps in with a fix, offering temporary relief, but the dependency keeps increasing. The real issue is the system's overall resilience and adaptability, which was never truly fixed." Suddenly, he remembered a story from college. A friend, Ajay, always crammed just before exams. Every time he managed decent marks, but his real understanding never developed. He became accustomed to the temporary fix of last-minute cramming. However, in his final year, when the syllabus became much larger, this strategy failed and he barely avoided failing. The same principle applied here. Sumit thought. The next day he gathered his team. "We've made many changes and they've yielded good results, but there's a major problem. We're solving issues with temporary fixes instead of understanding the real problem." A team member asked, "We were focusing on sustainability, but we haven't given enough attention to adaptability. Systems should be able to adjust to external changes, otherwise they will always remain dependent on external fixes." He explained the concept of match. If you treat the symptoms instead of the root cause, the system loses resilience over time. The whole team got into the discussion and gradually the real root cause became clear. The team lacked autonomy. Whenever an issue arose, solutions were imposed from above, and the team couldn't develop the skills to adapt the system themselves. Sumit then made a new plan. The fixes would no longer come from the top down. Instead, the team would be given the freedom to analyze issues and propose solutions. If a problem arose, the first step would be root cause analysis, not immediate patchwork fixes. Gradually, the team began finding their own solutions. Now, when an issue occurred, the first question was whether the problem was recurring. If so, they would investigate the root cause. After a month, the system's stability had improved. Productivity fluctuations were reduced, and the team became more confident and self-sufficient. That evening, Sumit opened Maj's book again. "Addressing root causes rather than symptoms builds long-term resilience," he smiled. Systems thinking is not just about fixes, it's about asking the right questions. Sumit felt his team had become more independent and resilient. Focusing on root cause analysis reduced the dependency on short-term fixes, and the team was solving issues on their own. The system now seemed self-sustaining. But then a new problem emerged. One day, Sumit received a call from HR. The team's efficiency had improved, but complaints were coming from other departments. The design team said that the development team's fast iterations were disturbing their workflows. The testing team said the rapid changes made it hard to track bugs. The sales team was frustrated because they had to constantly explain updates to clients. Sumit slammed his hand on the desk. "We've optimized our system, but we've lost balance with the other systems," he thought. That night, he opened Thinking in Systems again. The chapter was about how systems are nested within larger systems, and boundary selection shapes how we analyze and intervene in systems. Sumit carefully read the concept. Every system is a part of a larger system, and if we optimize only one part, the problem just shifts elsewhere. For example, if one road in a city is smoothed out, but the rest of the infrastructure is neglected, traffic issues may shift to other roads. Similarly, controlling pollution in one place may increase it elsewhere. Sumit realized this was happening with his team. They had improved internal efficiency, but alignment with other departments had loosened. To solve the problem, he would have to look at the entire system, not just his team. Suddenly, he remembered a project from a few years ago when he worked at a startup. The focus was solely on sales growth, and the sales team aggressively brought in new clients. But the back-end operations didn't scale at the same rate. As a result, customer complaints and product issues multiplied, and the company lost many clients. "I'm making the same mistake again," Sumit thought. The next day he called for an all-team sync meeting. "We've improved our efficiency, but what impact is it having on the other teams?" he asked. The design lead said, "Your fast changes require us to redesign constantly. We need a more stable workflow." The testing team added, "We like continuous integration, but if the frequency of changes is too high, quality control becomes difficult." The sales team said, "Clients like the updates, but it's hard to keep explaining so frequently." Sumit explained, "If we optimize only within narrow boundaries, we'll just shift problems elsewhere." So what's the solution? "Expand the boundaries," someone suggested. "We can't think just from our team's perspective. We need to look at the entire system. Development, design, testing, sales, everyone needs to be balanced together," Sumit said. They designed a new workflow. The development team would release major updates on fixed cycles, giving the design and testing teams time to adjust. The design team would get early access to the development roadmap so they could anticipate changes. The testing team would have a better tracking system to manage change frequency. A client communication strategy would be optimized, and visibility into the product roadmap would be shared with all teams. Slowly things started to improve. Now, not only had the development team's efficiency increased, but the entire system was synchronized. That evening, Sumit opened Thinking in Systems again. Systems can't be fixed in isolation, he read. We must consider their place in the larger network. He smiled. Systems thinking isn't just about optimization, it's also about setting the right boundaries. Sumit felt that the coordination between his team and the other departments had improved. Expanding the boundaries had smoothed out workflows, and optimizing one team's performance no longer caused problems for the rest. But then, something happened that gave him another deep lesson in systems thinking. One day, an urgent client request came in. The client urgently needed a new feature delivered by next week. The entire team went into panic mode. The development team dropped their current tasks and started working on the new feature. Kenneth Boulding referred to systems as a big black box, where we only see the input and output, but what's going on inside is not fully visible. Sumit realized that he had also been looking at his team through a specific lens. If productivity was increasing, everything seemed fine. But was productivity really the true measure? Was that the right approach? Suddenly, he remembered a story from college. Once, their college implemented a new grading policy where only high scores were rewarded. At first, everyone worked harder, but over time, creativity and collaboration started to fade. People were studying just for the marks, not for knowledge. The system had made grades the primary measure of success, but the real goal, learning, had been lost. The same mistake had happened here. Sumit thought about this and decided to gather his team the next day. We've improved productivity metrics, but does that mean our system is truly better? He asked. At first, the team was silent. Then one member spoke up, saying, to be honest, we don't feel as motivated as we did before. Meeting deadlines is important, but sometimes it feels like we've become machines. Another person added, we thought more efficiency would make everything better, but now it feels like we've lost flexibility and creativity. Sumit explained the concept of measuring. If we rely too much on simplified models, we miss the full picture. So, what's the solution? Someone asked. We need to test our assumptions, Sumit replied. We need to see if what we're considering success is actually the full truth. They created a new framework that measured not only productivity metrics but also engagement and creativity. They began gathering regular feedback from employees about how they were feeling, work-life balance, and job satisfaction. The team remained steady, but creativity and motivation slowly started to return. Now, they were optimizing not just for efficiency but for overall well-being. Later that evening, Sumit opened the book on systems again and smiled. He realized that systems thinking wasn't just about finding the right solution, but also about asking the right questions. Sitting in his balcony watching the glowing city lights, Sumit closed the book and took a deep breath. In the past few months, he had probably learned more than in his entire career. Initially, he had thought that increasing productivity was the ultimate goal, but over time he realized that systems don't just run on numbers, they involve people, emotions, and dynamics. He created feedback loops, leveraged points, adjusted boundaries, built resilience, and challenged his mental models. But the biggest lesson was that asking the right questions was more important than finding the right solution. The next day he gathered his team again. We've learned efficiency, adaptability, and sustainability, he said, but the real challenge is to never think our system is perfect. Systems evolve, and we always have to stay open-minded. The team smiled, knowing that this wasn't just a project, it was a new way of thinking. Sumit took one last look at the book and said to himself, systems thinking isn't just for work, it's for life too. Now he could look at any problem from a new perspective, and that was his greatest victory. So friends, that was today's book summary. Let us know how you liked it by commenting, and thank you for listening to the summary till the end.